Hi guys, so I'm back and now with the real-time coloring of Esmeralda. She's a beautiful little bitch by Make It Crafty, and I had a lot of fun coloring her, and I thought I wanted to give you another real coloring. I don't know if I'm gonna make this a thing or not. We'll see. It adds on quite some time, especially when it comes to voiceovering, because you do voiceover in real time. And the last Esmeralda video, the one that is sped up with the card making, it ended up being I think 15 minutes long, and I think this is towards 50 minutes long or something like that, so it's a little bit longer, but yeah, that's because it's real time. This character took a while to color, but I really liked how she turned out, and I hope you will like how she turns out too. When I do skin this time, I have chosen to do a new skin color. And even though I have swatched this on a separate paper, it's still the first time I'm working with this specific color scheme. So I'm being a little bit more careful where I put the shades, and I actually did put too much of the dark shades on some parts and too little on others. But that is something I kind of have to learn with all the different color schemes. Every color scheme is different. And also, this color scheme I kind of picked myself. But when you pick color schemes from online, you have to think about you don't always know how many layers that the person uses, how much they have blended it, over how much part they have blended it. There are so many parts that kind of weighs in on how to use a color scheme. So I always usually recommend to make an image or two with the color scheme that you want to try out before going into your final card. But sometimes you don't have time with that, and then it might not be as good blended. But I did really like how this turned out. There are a few changes I would have done. One thing also, when I make videos for you, I usually choose to color all of the details in the same colors, one color after each other. This don't lend itself for good blending. I don't know, I think I've talked to you about this before. The best blending you get by working on wet paper, basically, or working with the wet ink. So if you work in smaller portions at a time, for example, start with her face and then go down to her neck and bosom and then go down to her legs, and do those one piece at a time and do the whole coloring of it, you will keep that area wet from the ink, and the colors will blend much more easy. They will kind of seep into each other, and that will lend for a better blend. I'm rhyming also, but it will give you a better blend, but it also will give you another you will see it differently. And this also depends on different papers, but I know that when you color on, for example, Nina, which I do sometimes, the wetness will show up darker than when you color on, say, Make It Crafty paper, because of the paper being as thick as it is. The pens dry a little bit faster, and therefore you get the lighter results earlier than you do with, for example, Nina. But with Nina, you have it a little bit easier to blend when you have worked up the wetness in the paper. You have more time to blend because it will not dry as fast. So there is a lot of differences between different papers, and if you don't get the results you want on one kind of paper, try to figure out kind of why it is, and try other papers try one that is a little bit denser or try one that is a little bit less dense, because you will see that maybe you are very heavy-handed with your ink, and then maybe Nina is one of those papers that is better for you, while if you have a harder time with the Nina, maybe you are much lighter with your ink and a denser paper would work better. So a little bit about the coloring on little Esmeralda here. She, as you can see, I have put a shadow just between her eyes, because that kind of makes them, if you look at yourself, at your own face, you will see you have a little dent just below your eyebrows in towards where your eyes are, and it's not as deep as where your eyes are, but when you are coloring like cartoons like this is, it actually, you simplify the images, and that is also how it works when you kind of pick out how you are coloring a character. You want to simplify it. I love working towards the realistic as much as possible, and you can color however you want to. There is no wrong way of coloring, as long as you yourself feel that what you are coloring looks good, then it's all up to you. So this is just my way of thinking and my way of coloring, and that is basically all of these videos is about. I explain how I do this, and hopefully you will like it and you will get ideas. Even if you don't color like me, you might get ideas on how to color things. But that is a new thing that I have learned, is that if you add that little shadow just between the eyes, just beneath the eyebrows, you get much more dimension in the face, and you get that extra. I've been feeling that I've been missing something, like in the forehead, that it gets pretty flat, and then you have the little button nose, and by just adding that little bit of shadow, you actually just enhance that. And when I color in steps. I start carefully with the shadows, and if I'm unsure of where I want to put the shadows, or if I kind of want to just kind of figure out, I usually use my lightest color to block those shadows out. This makes me get less issues with maybe putting the shadow at the wrong side of the arm or the leg, which I do on occasion. I have a couple of videos that I really seen that, oh, I wasn't supposed to have a shadow there, that's kind of right in the sun. But sometimes you do wrong, sometimes you can do things better. I'm still learning. I think you will never be a complete fully learned as a artist in any kind of way, just as the job I usually have, which is a web developer, programmer. I will never be fully learned. There will always be new things to learn. But anyhow, after I've gone through all the colors, I go from the darkest to the lightest, and that is because for every color you go lighter, for every color you go, when you go from light to dark, you will be wanting to blend. So when you go from light to, and then you use medium, then you want to blend out medium with the light, and then you want to go to the dark, and then you want to blend out the dark with the medium, and then the medium with the light, and so on. And you get a lot more layers. There is nothing wrong with a lot more layers, but you might lose definition from your image when you go that way. You might with this way, when I've gone over once, if I like the results, I leave it. If I want to have deeper shadows, I go over a second time, and then I go over a third time. It's much easier to evaluate each layer, because if you go from light to dark, you will always have, and you use 3 pens, you will always have, the light will always be 3 times Therefore you will never get those really light lights. Like when I do this, my lights, if I leave the lightest, I can leave the lightest as it is. And many times when I go from light to dark on the second part, when I go in with my lightest color, I don't cover the other light completely, so I get a few even lighter highlights. And that way it looks like I have used maybe 6 or 7 pens when I've used 5. And yeah, I'm hopeless that way. I know that you don't need 5 colors to color skin, but I kind of like it, because what makes the dimension is the darks and the lights. And by having 5 pens, I don't have to struggle with the blending between them, because I will have smaller steps between them. I also have more opportunity to have different colors and layer different colors on top of each other to get other tints than what I have in my pens. For example, she would look really, really funny just with the E84, because that is a very olive, almost towards yellowish mud color, and just having the 80s would have made her look very, very muddy, and that is why I've added the E30s and the E50s to kind of build on and give a little bit more life back into her face and skin overall. For the shadows, I do both my rounded shadows and my cast shadows when I work. I saw that, I think Zoe goes, after she have completed the whole image, she goes another round and do the cast shadows on top of it. And I think that is a really good idea. I'm going to see if I can kind of figure that out and play around a little with that, because cast shadows usually have a much of a sharper edge to them. So you do want to put them on last, I think. So yeah. Now I have gone on to the inside of the dress. So the idea is, if you ever have seen like Dracula or something like that, they have these usually black satin capes, and then on the inside they have this big red revealing. It's a dramatic cape. And the idea that I have when I do this is that I want to, with how the artist has drawn the image, you have those reveals of the inner side of the dress, on the inner side of the sleeves. And I felt that I really wanted that part to pop. But I wanted it also, as I wanted it not to be same color scheme as Zoe, so I wanted it to be different. And with the pumpkins and fall and everything, I decided that this would be the color scheme to go for. So I'm working on the folds. Now, I am not a very good fold colorist. I am an okay fold colorist. I'm still struggling, still don't have it naturally. Many things, if you do them a lot, you finally get them into your kind of backbone, and you learn, you kind of know magically where you're gonna put things. And some of the things I do, I always had in my backbones, because I played with them when I was younger, long before I started doing coloring. While other things I have learned bit by bit from all kinds of different places. YouTube, from e-tutorials. Zoe's e-tutorials is awesome. She has really, really good tutorials, which are so full of tidbits and aha moments that they're so worth the money. They're awesome. And I'm not saying this because I'm a DT of her and everything. I'm saying this because they really are good. I only believe in representing companies that you feel you will want to support, and that you would support even if you weren't a part of their design team and such. Being on a guest team, usually I do that either for companies where I never ever have played around with their stamps, and I kind of want to try them out, and here I get a chance to do that by being as a guest in their design team. But to be a core team member, for me, it's extremely important that I really, really love the stamps, and that I think it's worth my time to work with them. And mostly because most materials I pay for myself. So basically, as a design team member, you get free images and that you work with. It depends from company to company how much you get for your DT spot, but I really, really love the companies that I am DT for, which I am for Make It Crafty, and I'm very I'm trying to say that every time I make a video with those stamps, that I am a design team member. But the reason why I talk so much about Zoe's tutorials is because they are really, really good. They're ebooks, so it's basically you work on your own. You don't have the hand held that you can do from certain courses. You can have that direct interaction with some teachers, but Zoe is always happy to help you if you have any kind of need constructive criticism, need to figure out why your images doesn't turn out the way you want them to. She always have really good things to say, and she's really good at it, and she does that for free. So I would really recommend, if you want to learn folds, if you want to learn coloring faces, she has an awesome tutorial on that too, and hair and everything. So do recommend that. Go and hop on to the Make It Crafty page and look at them. Also, she has a YouTube for Make It Crafty, youtube.com/makeitcrafty. Awesome videos. She just released one with Esmeralda, so if you want to see her version of it, you should really go and look on that too. But yeah, I still practicing folds. I'm still learning how to make folds, and but I do love playing with images with folds, even though they take a long time to color. This is the cut down version. It's 50-minute long, I think, and it has all the pen switches cut out and everything. But yeah, so for the color scheme that I chose, I'm going for a fall version. So it's a very dark pumpkin orange for the band and for the peekaboo parts of the dress, and for the eyes, I somehow love eyes that are a different color, that are different, but I'm a little bit different. That might be the reason. But I really, really love having a evil witch with the red eyes. And then I also use the orange and the darker oranges on her lips to make them stand out a little bit, and keep them with the color scheme. That is one of the things I like when I pick colors, is to keep very muted color schemes. And in this case, I chose to do a orange brown, and yeah, the orange is kind of wow in your face, and the brown is a deep darker brown, but it's still kind of a popping brown. But because of them being very close to each other in the color scheme, you get more of a muted effect. You get it much softer. It's basically using one neutral and one bright color. And I have a lot of videos on how I do that. I did a series of French images, or also from Make It Crafty, but they have a series of 3 smaller French images, and I just used 2 of them to do sort of monochromatic images but with a touch of color. And I like them. I like the color scheme, and that is kind of what I lend towards, these more muted, more simpler color schemes, because they can pop really, really good. And the more colors you put into an image, the more different focal points you put in it. So when you use a lot of different colors in an image, you want them to tell a story. So when you do kind of a big scene, and this is also one of those things that So is really good at, making big scenes with trees and hills and everything, but she kind of tells a story with different saturations and different amount of grays and blues in the color to kind of make your eye wander in the image. I still struggle with that. I still struggle with using a lot of different colors. Using just 1 or 2 makes the storytelling much easier. Sort of. This is becoming a very long voiceover, but I kind of like it, and I hope you like it too. I don't know how many of you still here saw in my analytics that about, I think it's 30% of you actually watches after the 5-minute mark or something like that. So it's a pretty good deal of people anyway. It's in the 100 or something like that. But yeah, I also saw a video. I'm gonna stray from my coloring for a little while, but I saw a video today. One of my other favorite YouTubers out there, which is Tara Sells of Curly Q's, she does a Q&A video every month. She has one Q&A video every month where she kind of tells a little bit about her month, a little bit about the creations last month, what she has planned sort of for the upcoming months, and also have the kind of Q&A part where she answers questions. And I kind of wondered if that is something you want to see on the channel. See a Q&A. I could answer any kind of questions regarding anything. I'm a very open person. I don't mind speaking about my life, so yeah. But and about my crafting, the reason why I make videos is I want to share my love of crafting. I want to share the things I learn about crafting, and hoping that you maybe can learn something from me, from my crafting. Yeah, a lot of yeah in this. So the hat. Now we have come into actually coloring the hat, and first I have based the image in some chocolate browns. I'm using the E15, I think, is the base color, and this is the kind of important thing why I'm using the technique I'm using. I want the D15 is a pretty light, almost pink brown, and in this case I felt it was way too light to have as the lightest part on her dress, but I really wanted to have this color because I wanted the tint of it. And if I would go darker like in the E17, I would lose a little bit of that pink. So I'm choosing to first layer the E15 all over the image to get a base layer. This will also give a under layer of the E15 as a base, so all the colors I put on it will be tinted a little bit by that pink, so it kind of gives all of the other colors a little bit more pink in them than they actually have. and that is I'm striving to get like a chocolatey brown, and like the E57 itself isn't that chocolatey. The E57 is a walnut. I think it's a light walnut. If I'm reading it correctly on the screen, I think it's actually a light walnut. But it's more towards the yellow spectrum than towards the red spectrum of browns. But by layering it on top of the E15, it gets more towards the pink spectrum and towards the more chocolatey color than the others. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of based it in the E15. The other reason I based it in the E15 is that with Copics, because of them being translucent in a little bit, you can layer them to get a deeper version of that color. So by layering the E15 on top of the E15, I get a deeper color, a deeper pinker color. Still not the E17, but it's something in the middle between the E15 and the E17, and that was basically what I was after. And I'm going in and doing the hat with, I think, 2 layers, because I felt that I didn't get the perfect blend I wanted. So by doing another layer, that will blend it better. Also, I felt I didn't add enough of the shadows. I had too much of the mid color, and therefore I didn't get the dimension I wanted. The way to get dimension is to have really much contrast between your darkest dark and your lightest lights, but also by gradually going from one color to another. And if you have a lot of your mid colors, the image will get a little bit more flatter, while if you have too much of the darker color and the dark and light color, you will get it very, very sharp. And I'm looking for a middle where it is a kind of a rounded shape that I'm working with. So I want a good balance between the dark, the middle, and the light color. So yeah, basically that's how it works. This is hard. Doing long voiceovers are really, really hard. And I'm starting to lose my voice. But hey, everything for the YouTube channel. I don't need to speak tomorrow. Probably need to do a couple of voiceovers tomorrow, but hopefully this won't do anything to answer that. I usually get my voice back within an hour or something. But anyhow, so then I'm just layering over and over and over till I get the result I want to. And the nice thing about working on the Make It Crafty paper is that it doesn't want to bleed as much. If you put a lot of layers on top of each other onto Nina, you might start getting a bleed at the edges of the paper, because it's not as dense, it's more porous than the Make It Crafty paper. And because it is porous, the ink will spread more. And this is also the reason why it's easier to blend on Nina than it is on Make It Crafty. So yeah, again, different papers will act differently. The Express It, I have Express It. I haven't used it as much because it's a little bit shinier, I think, than the Make It Crafty paper, and I kind of like that the Make It Crafty is a little bit matter in the texture, but it's very similar to the Make It Crafty paper. It has a lot of the same characteristics. So if you can't get the Make It Crafty paper and want to try something that is a little bit denser than a Nina, then Express It is one of them. I know that some people swear by the Hammermill paper. I have not tried that. There is a paper called 4cc that is used. I think a lot of European crafters use the 4cc paper. I have the 160 GSM at home because I use it for other things, but I haven't tried coloring with Copics on it, so I might actually try that. So there's a lot of different papers different people use. I even have a friend that is a really good Copic colorist that uses ordinary copy paper. That, however, is complex because ordinary copy paper is very porous, so getting a good blend is very hard and you can't really layer on it. When you have layered one layer, the paper is saturated and you can no longer layer on top of it. It will not work as good as these denser papers. And that is also the thicker paper you have, and thicker and denser paper you have, the more layers you can put on it, because the more fibers it has to the ink can sink into. So all of the tips. I actually have a sketch pad which have pretty porous paper that I actually tried coloring with the Copics on, and they wouldn't blend at all. You couldn't get an even surface even with the pens, and it started to peel. So I don't recommend using Copics on like sketch paper. I don't think watercolor cardstock is a good thing either, because that is even more porous. So you need the right kind of paper to work with your different mediums. Then we're continuing on here with the dress. Now there are a few things that I've thought about when I have done the dress. First of all, I do color it, base it with the E15, just as I did with the hat, again for the same reasons. I want to have that color as a base color for the others to work upon. I think Sandy Alnock have talked about glazing when she have talked about Copics, and I think that is referred to when you add a color on top of your already shaded colors to give it a new tint. For example, I think using grays and doing a grayscale shading and then adding one color on top of that just to get that color shaded. That is a way to work if you don't have that many Copics. However, the gray will tint the color a little bit gray, so you will get a more of a muddier color than if you would work with the pure Copics and layer those foreshadows. So one technique I'm using here when it comes to my little folds and such is that because I'm working towards a pretty dark color, if you shade your cast shadow and your rounded shadow directly beside each other as they are laying, you will kind of lose a lot of dimension and you will lose a lot of details. So in this project, I'm trying to leave a little bit of a light border on my rounded parts that have a cast shadow beneath them or at the side of them to make them look better. And I did that in the middle part also, but it's more apparent in the arms. And I can say I'm not good at folds and finding folds and such. If you want to see a really good fold creation, you should look at the Esmeralda that Zoe colored. Beautiful, just beautiful. But I do have a few of them that I kind of picked up from Zoe from previously working with them. There's a few things. I try not to enhance the groin shadows too much. I kind of make them all dark, because otherwise all you see is her groin area. That is something you want to kind of think about when you add shadows, when you add anything that can draw your image. If they have like a teeny tiny skirt, if you color that a color that is very, very different from the rest of the image, then the first thing your viewer will see is that teeny tiny skirt. And if that is what you want, go for it, because there's nothing wrong with putting attention to a miniskirt if that is what you're after. Everyone should be who they are, wear what they want, when they want. I'm not saying that something is better than anything, but I think you should be aware of what things will put kind of attention to. I'm very I have a very big bum. Many people would say that I don't have a very big bum, but proportionally I have a pretty big bum, because I have a very tiny waist, so you can really see my bum. So I wear clothes that not hides it, but kind of doesn't make it more apparent than it is. So I've chosen jeans where the pockets kind of don't make my bum bigger. Sidetracking here, but that is with everything, especially with like card making and art and everything, is that you want to enhance what you want the viewer to look at. You are telling a story. Again, you're telling a story. When you are coloring an image, you are telling a story. And you don't have to figure out, like, have a backstory for your character. Like, I'm coloring a witch, Esmeralda. I think she's really cool looking. I have no clue which kind of witch she is. I have no clue who she is. It's not like I'm doing a cartoon book. I'm doing a card for someone. So I don't have that kind of story. But when I do a card, I kind of think, how do I want the viewer to look at the card? I try to put my details so the eye of the viewer moves with the details and kind of discover new things throughout. And when I color an image, that is a part of it. Like trying to make the shadows not too intense in the groin area, so that you don't just see the groin area, because that is not how I want to portray my Esmeralda. I want you to kind of look at her sleeves. I want you to look down where her feet are, because I think it's kind of a cool folding effect around her feet. And I want you to look at her eyes and her face. And therefore I try to have details and coloring in those parts that makes your eye being drawn to those parts. So in the bottom part of this clothing, I give her very sharp highlights, because those highlights will make you automatically kind of, oh, look, a fold and another fold and another fold. And the parts I want you not to look at as much, I kind of give shadows, longer shadows, not deeper shadows, longer shadows. I think that's also important, because deeper shadows can have the same effects as lighter as your highlights. The shadows in themselves can make you look at them more if the contrast is high. So I try to not have that big of a contrast in her groin area. I've used that word a couple of times now. But I think it's a kind of a proper word anyway. You have to talk about your body parts somehow. But anyhow, so and I'm making you look at a drawing quite a lot, right? It's not my purpose, but it's a way to explain the coloring, my coloring process. I think with a video like this, it's more about my process of where I come, how I come to my end result, and the process on how I think. Because I'm not a really good teacher to say that if you color your fold this way, you will look. I know that my fold isn't that good, so I can't help you with that. I'm sorry, but I can kind of help you with the idea behind why I put my shadows the way I do. And also that is the whole part about making her top chocolate brown and not having too much of a contrast. This is why I want to go over with the E15 several times over the highlights to kind of tone them down a little bit, so that there are other things in the image that you will look at. I must say though that I did a pretty bad job at coloring the owl. Just saying, when we come there you will see it, but I did a pretty bad job. If I had put a little bit more thought about it, I would probably have colored him a little bit lighter so that he would have stood out a little bit more. The clothing is so dark and I'm using the same colors in the owl, so he just becomes a part of her instead of being a separate item. And I think I probably would have wanted him to be a separate item in the end. But that's things you kind of figure out when you go. And it wasn't enough to make me recolor the image. That is also, when you put in an hour and a half, 2 hours into coloring something, you can't give up too early if you make something wrong. Usually I try to fudge it or I try to accept it, because coloring the same image for 4 hours, it's not that fun. I like to kind of mix it up. And also I was really excited of making the background for this, which took me a couple of weeks before I made, because I didn't have all the supplies I needed. But anyhow, the whole card was kind of, this image popped so much onto that background that it made the image look even better than it was. And that is also a way of doing it. If your image doesn't fully turn out the way you wanted it, maybe you can actually build it up with the background. So there are many ways. For the owl, I'm going in, and first of all, I should have distinguished the tummy from the head and back wings. That is one thing that I feel that I should have done more, because now he becomes a little brown blob. I wanted him to be more accented than he is. So that is a little sad part. I would have wanted him to be more, stand out more, be a little bit lighter. I think with all of the darkness and the pop of the orange, I would probably go for a neutral gray or a neutral lighter, like an E40. You know, you can use E40s for everything. You're starting to understand that I love my E40s, right? Then I'm going into her bracelet and her little belt. And I wanted to keep with the color scheme. I didn't want to add any more new colors when it come to that, because I knew I wanted another color for the hair. So I went in with the lighter colors that I used for her skin. and because that would work with the skulls. So I didn't go in with the darker shadows. This is a detail that I wanted to have. I wanted it to be seen, but I didn't want it to be the focal part of the image, and therefore I chose not to shadow it too much. Therefore it's not just out there. You still see it, but it's not really, I don't know, it fits better in the image by not giving it too deep shadows. Then we come to the hair, and this is a kind of a fun thing, because I was all about, she is getting black hair, she is getting W'd black hair, but I'm going in with the lightest color that I'm gonna use and kind of build up the shadows. And I'm like, wait a minute, she looks pretty awesome with that gray hair. She should not have black hair. She's already so dark with the strong orange and the strong browns that she needed something that was a little bit lighter, that popped a little bit. So she got gray hair. Now I chose to go all the way down to W6. Probably could have stayed at W4 to keep her hair a little bit lighter, but kind of wanted the W6 in her hair. And also, grays are always a little bit tricky because they are usually a little bit lighter than you see them on paper when you put them down. The wetness in the ink will make them a little bit darker. That happens with most colors, but grays are one of those that really lightens when you work with them. So I usually try to go over like once, seeing how the light lies and letting that dry before I get over it the second time. Also, if you want to have a stranded hair so that you make flicks in the hair to look like they have strands, you do want your ink to dry before you go over the second layer, because otherwise your flicks will just blend together with the rest of it if it's wet. So those are a few tips of mine when it comes to hair. And in this case, I just made the hair as I felt, kind of added shadows where I felt, okay, I need a little bit more here or a little bit more here. And then I just added them. It was no specific technique. And then I go over with the WO over the lighter part, and by doing that I actually also lighten up the darker parts. Some lighter pens will lighten up because they have so much of the blender solution in them, so they will kind of lighten up the darker parts you go over. But as I said previously, I think it was in this video, if you go over with a lighter pen over top on darker colors, you can start to get a blotchy effect. If you want that kind of texture, awesome, but you have to be aware that it can arrive. That is also why I based with the E15. Sometimes you can hear things several times, then you remember them better, maybe. For the last part, I colored her little spiders and her little bat, and I did that with the W8, and I fully filled it in because I wanted it to be really black. Then I went in with the W10 for the shadows, and I didn't really blend that out because I just let that shadow part be. I didn't want that much dimension on these critters. I just wanted them to be black but not completely flat. And also I'm going in with a little bit of a gel pen. So this is a white gel pen. I also always prime them on my skin, so I kind of warm up the tip, because the ink will flow easier in the pen when you do that. I have a Jelly Roll, white Jelly Roll pen. It is my favorite, I think. I do like the Uniballs too, but the Uniball is a wider marker, so it has a little bit more of a wider line. So I do like the working with the jelly roll. So I usually have the jelly roll as the white, and now I'm just adding like parts where it would be a little bit lighter. I go wild with the pen this time because why not? Also adding a little bit of lighter on the skulls to make them pop a little bit extra, on the eyes and on the spiders. That's basically where I add the whites, just to give a little bit extra shine to the image. And that was all of the coloring for the image this time. I hope you liked it. If you do, please thumbs it up. If you want to see more real-time coloring videos, just comment down below and tell me so. Down below you find all the details of the coloring, like which Copic I was using and such. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!